This is Inspiring Design, where unique innovators come together to share their knowledge, share their insight, and keep us up to date with the latest industry trends. And here's your host, Rushan Senanayake.
What's up, listeners? Welcome to Season 4 of Inspiring Design with Rushan Senanayake. This is where the best of the best brands, experts, change makers, and thought leaders come together to share their valuable insights, experience, and knowledge, all centered around the growth sector in advanced manufacturing within Industry 4.0, encompassing various industries, technologies, skills, knowledge, trends, as well as stakeholders, all the while linking it back into education within schools and universities. In today's episode, we feature one of the leading minds in robotics, Dr. Corey Stewart. Corey is the founder and CEO of the Advanced Robotics Manufacturing Hub, also known as the ARM Hub, a non-for-profit company on a mission to digitally transform Australian industry. The ARM Hub specializes in AI, robotics, IoT, design and manufacturing, and collaborates with industry and research to modernize the manufacturing practice, building new manufacturing tech, commercializing R&D, and build workforce capability for today. So today we join Corey at their factory and makerspace here in Brisbane, Australia. Throughout her career, Corey has been a recognized leader in developing large-scale partnerships between industry, research institutions, government, and the community. Corey has previously held senior university appointments and government policy roles in industry development, the digital economy, creative industries, and innovation, just to name a few. So without further ado, Corey, welcome to Inspiring Design. All right, Corey, so welcome to Inspiring Design. Can we start off with a little bit of background on yourself? What's your story?
My story is I arrived at doing the ARM Hub from innovation policy and government and from working in design and creative industries. And I came into the university building collaborations, and I worked in across design, and we have a partner next door to where we are here in the ARM Hub called UAP, one of the world's best design-led manufacturing firms, and they needed some automation assistance. And they really pioneered from going from a traditional manufacturing company right into an advanced manufacturing company. And so many companies were watching that and they're thinking, gee, if that company can do it, so can I. So over a period of about 3 years, we just toured and worked with companies through their facility, and eventually everyone said, we just need our own facility. We all need to be able to upscale and transform like UAP did. So I did that project, and then it was natural that we started building this bid and we built this company, and then it had to be led.
Awesome.
So it got me here.
And you mentioned you studied design. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I'm very early on, I started in visual arts. So my earliest start. So in that day, it was kind of a mix between fine arts and visual design, and I was at RMIT. And then I did come up to Queensland, where I was originally from, and I sort of went into that policy, arts and cultural media policy, innovation policy, economic policy, and worked at different levels of government. So
that's really interesting, because you would have been applying creativity within a policy environment naturally just because of your training. So that's pretty cool. Now, let's talk about the ARM Hub. We're obviously in this amazing facility. Tell us a little bit about who the ARM Hub is. What do you guys do? How did you actually found the company?
So that demand that came from so many other industry sectors, so manufacturers, but across industry sectors, really signaled to us and the research sector we needed to fill this gap. So the company was formed really with that industry driver and industry saying, we need an industry-based facility where we can come and we can test things, where we can access the experts, where we can, solve the problem. So it did take us a couple of years. We had to, we raised $18 million to kick us off.
Wow.
And we needed that, once you start running a facility of scale, and then making sure our outreach was national. Of course, then having a really embedded part to play in the ecosystem here in Queensland as well. So
Yeah.
it's an independent, not-for-profit company, which is registered as a scientific organisation and a charity.
Awesome.
It just keeps going. So
That's brilliant.
Anything that we make or do comes back into growing the company.
Perfect. And I think that's really cool coming from usually a manufacturing sector. People think that it needs to be one for-profit businesses or it's the, dirty, grungy, that's hands-on, that kind of thing. But this is actually transforming that image. So we'll get into those details in a little bit. But we're obviously surrounded by tech, like literally the coolest tech we can find. And it's here local in Queensland and in Australia. So we've got some headsets here. Literally, we're working with VR, AR, robotics in the background. Can you tell us a little bit about what are the tech you guys have right now that you use almost on a day-to-day?
I think the most common piece of technology we use here is collaborative robots. So not quite these big ones, although big robots can also be collaborative, which basically means they'll stop and they can't hurt you. So you can kind of engage with them and program them at will. But typically they're the smaller one. We have a whole makerspace over in that part of our facility, which has about 6 or so collaborative robots. And these robots allow you to test and trial things. They're very smart robots. So basically, once you go and you test it and you've made an application, you can reduce the complexity and get a less expensive and a less complex robot and roll out a solution.
Yeah.
But these very smart collaborative robots allow you to test and trial an enormous number of things from like the range of data and the programs that you can do, the different environments, and they're safe.
Yeah.
So they allow lots of collaboration to happen around whatever that solution is, a lot of trialing as well. So that's probably the most common. When we work in businesses, we find often the most common application is the augmented reality because it actually just solves so many of those design to manufacture challenges.
Yeah.
So rather than using a lot of paper printing, going from the workshop upstairs and the CAD drawings, taking a whole bunch of paper down into the manufacturing floor and saying, here, deliver this.
Yeah, which is what normal people, when I mean normal people, like I think the workforce, students, teachers that we're used to, we've seen it for 30, 50 years, I guess. So how does AR replace that?
Yeah, it really allows all that designing capability to be sitting in your screen and your space. So it's actually very complex for even the most skilled humans, if you're doing, say, fabrication, which is one of the typical environments, to build something in 3D. You really don't know the dimensions, but if you're able to put the goggles on and you can actually create it in 3D space automatically. So it really takes out the slug work of figuring out how to build something.
Yeah.
And, with one of the companies we trialed doing a typical paper-driven process, CAD into paper down to the manufacturing floor, and then one was just CAD into, headsets, and the job was completed and out to market before the papers were drawn up and put down to the manufacturing floor. So, and when they started that process, they didn't actually know which way it was going to go. They didn't know how difficult it is to create in, augmented reality. But the synopsis is that it is actually remarkably easy because that technology is getting better and better by the day.
Absolutely.
More precise.
Yeah. And they're kind of designed in a way to be plug in and play almost.
Yeah.
So if you're skilled in CAD and you can actually work with the applications, the softwares that you use, then plugging into this extension of a tool, it's actually much easier than I guess people can
see. I think what you say is really important. Like it's a tool, like a robot's a modern tool. This is just a modern tool. So what we're finding with, the people who are working in their jobs every day, they're the experts. Like they really know how to fabricate things, or they really know how to make things or set up systems. Like they know what quality looks like. They know what needs to happen. So you're not replacing that. You need that. The technology doesn't do all of that thinking.
Yeah.
The technology is literally just another tool to allow you to do it better, more efficiently, hopefully safer if there's a safety element.
Yeah.
And it might be more fun.
True.
Take all that, some of the dull stuff out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously these are the hardware applications that you can see, and then CAD is also something tangible. Are there other tech? And I think you know which ones you're talking, which ones I'm prompting at. Are there other tech?
Like AI?
Yes.
The imaginary data space.
Yep.
Look, data is probably the greatest story to tell about modern industry, like modern life probably, but I think about modern industry. because what we're really doing at this time across the world, but very much here in Queensland, Australia, is transforming companies from thinking about themselves as manufacturing goods and products to being data companies. Like they might manufacture something, but when they manufacture their cake, it might be that there's data value embedded in the object. It might be their systems data says something. It might be that their customer data says something. And they might be able to derive value from that data. And then there's supply chain data. So this is where we're seeing companies having to go because industry is going there. So you can be a first mover advantage in understanding the value of your data and trying to do something with it. Or you can be just keeping it safe and starting to understand your own systems better. Or you can start thinking about it, and this is where people typically start in manufacturing, is thinking about the product and the data that might be informing the product or in the product itself, like artificial intelligence in some way. But you're really thinking about that whole spectrum. And we don't think about it as automatically as we think about kind of making stuff with machines and goggles because you can't see it.
No, absolutely. And how do technologies like IoT devices and it's a term thrown around and kind of becoming more and more mainstream simply because those technologies are now inbuilt into products that we almost use in our living rooms that sometimes people aren't even aware of it. How does IoT, for example, play a role in this?
Well, IoT is one of the absolute core technologies that sit across manufacturing, like many industries. It's a device that collects and transmits data, and that data can be collected to give you some sort of value. And I think perhaps in manufacturing, one of the rudimentary but important ways you see it, it'll be attached to some sort of physical process line, and it's going to tell you, is that machine doing what it should be doing? Is it shaking? Is it putting out as many objects as it should? Is it keeping humans safe for what they need to be safe for? It might be doing anything, but IoT, that's, these devices having their independent transmitting and data capture capability.
And obviously, these are things like sensors, or it could be a manufactured product that might be an inbuilt AI system like assistance.
So, awesome. Absolutely.
So one of the things that I really wanted to ask you was about the technologies that we can see in the near future. It's obviously someone like yourself who's in the forefront of technology. You use literally the coolest toys in your day-to-day job. So what are your thoughts on the tech that we can see in the future and what we can expect to see?
I think clearly the technologies that we're going to see are going to be infused with a much more sophisticated sense of AI and how we use it. So it's going to be faster with 5G. We're going to be able to move much more data around, interrogate that data. Part of that's always going to be about managing data risk. We're really seeing that play out in the international landscape. For every business now, so that it's the risk and reward with data, and also being able to ethically use, understand, or explain AI will be a big part of the future. Like, do we know how it's making a decision? Why did it make that decision? Is it the right decision? How can we confirm that decision? I think this is something that mainstream will know about soon, but it's certainly something that the land of research is trying to tackle for industry and for publics. The other kind of toys here, which are really tools, but it's, some people find them like toys, are going to be collaborative robots. So there's this vision of robots taking away the human out of everything, blacked out manufacturing, 24-hour operations, no human inside. I don't really think that's going to be the mainstay future in this next 10 years. The mainstay future in the next 10 years is going to be more about building tools that humans can use and have their own control over and expertise, but assist them with that job, do quality assurance on that job, ensure that works better. It's going to be the tool that allows like a welder to do precision welding of great quality without hurting their eyes and their back. There'll be the tool that allows people to get in confined spaces to fix paint or repair things. So we're still going to have all these jobs that humans are going to be a really important part of. It could even be, sewing up heart stents companies or manufacturing in very like small manufacturing environments, there'll be tools that help humans make those more precise and do quality assurance on them, and help them grip it and keep it secure. So these collaborative robots, I think, is where we're going to see the next phase of innovation around robotics. And we haven't really seen them yet, because some of the technology we're working on now is how does a robot tell you what it's going to do next? And how does a human tell the robot what it's going to do next? So this being able to anticipate and understand, like work collaboratively and genuinely together, is actually a bit at forefront of technology that's coming into play.
Absolutely. I think you're right in saying the ethics side of things and the moral side of things of AI and those decision-making capabilities, it's actually the forefront of, I think, where this technology will take it to the next level. And I've seen, I think, news articles and some announcements about these leaders in global technologies, like companies like Tesla, even doing things about if a car is autonomous and it actually has an accident, is that the AI's accountability, or is it the person behind the wheel, or is it something altogether? So it's very interesting, actually. I think
who's legally responsible for it? So I think that's like a lot of technology areas, it's often not the technology that's the challenge. It's the people. People are really complex. And then it's the legal systems, the regulatory systems, the supply chain issues and complications, or, exports or standards, all of this other work that sits around the ability for industries to function at a high level. So we think about technology a lot, but I think the technology is often way out there. And that's why the hype curve goes right up, and then you think, oh my God, look at all the problems. And then, it comes back. There's probably a few reasons for the hype curve, but that's definitely one of them.
And I think it's one of those things similar to when someone first invented, let's say, the knife. Someone with a knife could actually use that for unethical purposes, but at the same time could create a beautiful chef's cuisine, or use that as a tool to sculpt something really beautiful. I think we're still trying to figure out where these tools are fitting into the next, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And I think it's a really cool time. So bringing it back into industry, and one of the things whenever we think about automation, AI, robotics, is usually people think job losses and the evolution of what's happening in Industry 4 and replacing things and stranding people in this.
I just don't agree.
Why not?
Look, robotics really is about creating the future capability. So I experience it every day here with the companies that we're working for. So companies put on an average of 3 to 8 robots. 3 to 8 workers for every robot that they put in place. So they're building their capability. They've got novel abilities, they're more productive, and they're more competitive, and they're skilling their workforce. So you're really going from having a workforce that is probably not used to using technology tools, and just skilling them up into this future of connected and opportunity and tools. So it's creating those high value jobs and new jobs. So robots are really creating the jobs of the future, and it's really ingrained in us. I think it was like a popular culture thing, right? We have been told that robots can be dangerous, and we've seen movies that robots are going to take over your life, and we want to fear them. It's in our psyche, and it's in the media hype cycle for a long time. It's not going to go away, this idea that robots take jobs. If I was to get really technical about it, if we do not automate and implement robots quick enough, and other technologies quick enough, yes, there will be job losses when you do implement, because the companies will die because they will not be able to keep up with industry. So the real challenge is to go fast. As a nation, as a state, however we're framing it, it's about speed into a connected industry for global supply chains, capability building, and companies that don't manage that transition are unlikely to be able to compete into the future. And there's no shortcut. Like, you can't suddenly take a second mover advantage, like some industries say, well, it's really great they invented that and I didn't have to invest in it because, you know what, I'll just pick it up here. But the problem is you've got to pick up a whole workforce skill capability development.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's really important, and we're seeing it over and over again. Companies really just need to get started, start small, start somewhere real where you can see a win, bring your staff and your employees and your communities along with that transformation.
Yeah.
And it works, but it's got this whole psyche behind it around, like if it was just getting a new grinder, no one would think, I had this 1950s kind of grinder and it's a bit average. I just need to get my, modern version of it. And it's probably a robot.
Yeah.
But people have this association now with robots.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's a matter of evolving the jobs and understanding that it's requiring a different set of skills.
Yeah.
So even though I think there's job losses, I think I forget the exact stats actually, but I think it's for every job loss, there's about 3 more that's been created.
That's about right.
Just about more skill sets that are relevant to the current time, current technology. So I'm glad that you share the same opinion.
So I think where we're seeing it like really practically is, so one company has an expert Italian polisher. They are the most skilled person at polishing. They're the ones who can, they've implemented a robot to help them, but they're the ones who set the boundaries to that robot. They're the ones who now know how to program that robot, and that person in that company now runs their robotic fleet, maintains it, determines it. And that person was fairly young, had a sore back because it's a back-breaking job, needed a robot. So they're still the expert.
Yep.
They just got a better tool. So they've also upskilled themselves from being, using just manual, non-digital tools into using a whole new suite of tools. So they've given themselves an entire new career. So when we're seeing that, and that happen over and over again, so there's new capability you can bring into a business, but there is an important part of upskilling and using the expertise you have in your businesses.
Yeah.
So there's many ways to be part of the digital future.
Love it. And I think you framed that really beautifully, the digital future. So let's talk advanced manufacturing. One of the things that's very important right now, especially within Queensland, given that there are many, many industry sectors that fall within this bracket, and I want to be able to understand exactly what that is, how you guys fit in within the sector of advanced manufacturing, and going away from that perception that we had of, it's just about making the physical furniture items or the big things that we're seeing around the world, like cars or things like that. It's much more to that. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you guys fit into it?
Yeah, that's a good question. The ARM Hub really is about widespread industrial transformation. We really work across industry sectors. So very clean environments like your biomedical and your medical, entirely, small scale clean environments, right down to sometimes your waste and recycling, which could be using, algae and, all sorts of other kind of off-cut waste and recycling it using animals and byproducts, which could be incredibly messy and incredibly smelly. So manufacturing is a very big space across a lot of industries. So what's so important about it is that it is the driver globally for industrial transformation. We have thought for so long about innovation and data capability that's, fairly novel in the current century as being about apps.
Yep.
And those kinds of environments where it's actually also about making things. And Australia had to really learn this. It was in, only 30 years ago where we had over 30% of our economy was actually manufacturing. And it was only this week it got announced we're right down to 6%.
Wow.
Now, even before COVID, Australia and the globe were in a race to figure out who was going to have the advanced manufacturing future globally. And they knew it was a race. And I would say that Australia was really quite slow to that race. And the car industry going is sad, but also we less visible was the high value manufacturing you had in things like medical. We've actually been quite good with medical, but we really now need to get our race on. And we really now need to bandy together, because if Australia is not making the high value products of the future, we're not going to be part of the global supply chains. And this is the bit that scares me. This is the bit that really drives me to come to work every day. where are the jobs going to be for our future, generations if we can't be part of manufacturing. Manufacturing, if it's not a service, you're manufacturing something. It's an important part of what a high value, high skilled country needs to be able to do. And if we don't have those skills, we're going to be relegated to low service level jobs.
Yeah.
And we'll be like the playground of all the rich countries. And we want our children to have the same lifestyle expectations that we've had. And part of that is keeping the high value jobs, being able to make things, being at the smart end of making those things. That's what we need to do here. And the ARM Hub is really about making sure the capability that sits in our universities, our graduates, our professors have influence and capability in training up in companies, their next generation, getting their graduates and everyone back into industry, and trying to do this wide scale industrial transformation. So we do that as part of that network across Queensland, and that's really important because manufacturing, unlike maybe some other industries, can have a really important foothold in transforming regions and growing successful high value regional economies. And I would say that Australia as a whole is putting on its bets on manufacturing to do that, as the mining industry takes a decline over time, which is well known. So there's a lot at stake. And we definitely want our next generation thinking manufacturing is cool.
Absolutely. And I think if you can manufacture things that you can think of, and those creative problem solvers and creative thinkers coming up with really cool ideas that might be the next Apple iPhone, we don't even know. It's not invented yet.
I know, it is good to watch in companies now, whether it's like, building the next army tanks or making the next medical device or next door making the highest value art in the world. Like, they're the same company that make the Oscars in the US. Like, we're dealing with some very cool stuff. And so it's usually, the ladies and the men with the high vis, no collar workforce, down on the factory floor. And that's the place to be. That's where everyone wants to be now. No, not up there necessarily on the design tools or it's not a dirty, grungy, bad job. It's very cool.
And all the cool toys are there.
And they know how to use them. And the freedom is there now to make that difference.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned something about compared to what we used to do in the industry before, what did advanced manufacturing and even robotics look like, let's say 30, 50 years ago?
I think 50 years ago, advanced manufacturing was probably your robots that would have been on the automated, automotive industry floor. They're kind of what we...
The Toyota factories.
Robots that just did one thing, and, they still exist. They have a role to play, but today robots are smart. They've got digital systems that help them learn about what they've got to do, and so they don't just do the one thing. Like, if one of those large robots from 50 years ago, if there was a car there and it had to do a certain function, it would do it. If the car wasn't there, it would still do that function, So now these robots have all sorts of smarts in them, and our lifestyles and our industries demand that we want personalised things. You might want a car with a flush interior and, a lower seat and a kind of, nice panel across here that was all just about you. Like, now these factory lines can make that.
Sounds very nice.
This is this car. We've got to make heart stents for people, that are absolutely unique and taken from their own x-rays and have to be precisely positioned in their body in order to be successful for their own lives. We're very good now at doing customised or personalised manufacturing. And that's the smart, dexterous capability that modern life has compared to
and in big
the
scale,
early days.
Massive scale.
Awesome. I think it's more of this more mass customization, high value products, personalized demand is where we want to go as Australia too. So rather than this sort of mass customized, race to the lowest cost on anything, we probably won't win that race, but we will win a high value race.
Absolutely. Well said. Tying it back into our future generations. So the next Steve Jobs could be in one of the Queensland schools right now.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of skills do they need if they're interested in a career pathway like this, especially within the wide array of industries within advanced manufacturing? what kind of skills does it boil down to?
Yeah. Look, I would say your STEM skills are going to get you so far, and you've just kind of got to have them. And I think the next generation coming through will have solid literacy around data and data science. And you're very lucky. Like, good on you, modern schooling systems, to be giving kids this and to take that. But it's going to be the creative element. It's going to be, what can I do with that? How can I collaborate with that? So I think the creativity, say, what is needed in the world, what is new and novel and exciting that I can contribute, or, gee, I see this need, how can I address this need? What do I bring to this? You know,
design thinkers, basically.
Yeah, so you're perfect. We need more of you.
Yes.
And I think the other one is being able to collaborate.
Yeah.
So we, as a human race and an economy and an industry, we can't move very fast if we can't do things together. And unfortunately, in a way, Australian industry has kind of grown up in these silos where you sort of, particularly for innovation, which is our core business, they'll tend to build an innovation inside their business and haven't had a tradition of looking out to kind of have an open innovation model. Like, how can you go faster by working with others?
Yeah.
So this is a culture that's we're gradually breaking it down, and the Arm Hub plays a really important role in that. But I like to explain it, if we did have the next Steve Jobs, he could only work for one company because he's only one person. But if you collaborated with that company, you could all have a bit of Steve Jobs.
Yeah. That's actually a very nice way of saying it.
So you want a bit of Steve Jobs. You don't want to just ignore him and say he's over there and only the Steve Jobs company gets to win. Everyone wants a bit of Steve Jobs. You've got to learn how to collaborate, to go fast, and to win. We're in a race.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. And how do you see skills in terms of the thinking behind it? Now, this is an obvious question, I think. I'm just making sure that we reiterate it for the students and teachers. The tools and the technologies, they're obviously an extension even within industry. They're enhancing the capabilities that we're doing. But all the elements such as ethics and morals are underpinning the decisions, and the creative thinking is what's identifying the problems. How do you see the role of the human and our thinking ability, especially from looking at our kids to think of the mindset and the approach, and then coupling the technology? How important do you think that is?
We all have to be able to make decisions about what we want to bring into this world.
Yeah.
And I really see the confidence in young people and education as having a very clear picture about what they want to see and how they want to see it, from the environment to things that they want, recycling to, the world that they want to contribute to. So being that future you want to see and figuring out your role in it and never stepping back from it. It's always going to be complex to build careers and develop lives, but there is such an enormous potential. One thing that I think I would have benefited from hearing as a kid, I would have liked to have thought about, I can be really ambitious because there's so much opportunity out there. We look at Australian talent and its absolute demand and absorption into the global economy. We are, like, as a nation, we're in a race to keep our own talent. We're in a race to, keep our ideas and, realise them in Australia.
Yeah.
Everyone wants Australians to run their businesses. Everyone wants good, smart Australians to work wherever. No, go, but come back. Or, there is so much opportunity. So don't be shy. One thing that happens in Australia is because sometimes our industry isn't as deep or complex as some other countries. It might feel like there's not much opportunity, but just keep going because there's a huge amount of opportunity.
Yeah.
There's heaps of opportunity here, but you might go and come back in it. But we're in a race for your talent in the future. So be confident and go for it.
Absolutely. And I think Australia could be the next land of new opportunity.
Well, because we're high value,
yeah.
I think that's what we want. But, Australia's got a race.
Absolutely.
I can't say it. I've said it enough, haven't I?
You have. What's your advice for schools and universities and anyone who wants to prepare that next generation towards those elements that you've said? What's your advice for them?
yeah, because I'm so in it every day. So we work with, the Arm Hub works with over 15 research organisations, and we have mostly university graduates and schooling people as we come, and then, you know, lecturers and professors here. So I feel like, and they're all teaching the next generation. And, you know, I see in a lot of those young people, they're really skilled, but they, you know, they're still thinking, oh, what's the next future step and how do I do it? I think be in the moment that you're in, take as much as you can from it. And if you're an educator, encouraging them just to do the best you can at that time and learn what you can at that time, because the depth of experience you might get from that on its own is high value. Don't always look over there at the next technology, or it doesn't have to be the most modern technology to learn really important skills and capabilities.
Yeah. Well said. And lastly, if they want to learn more about the Arm Hub or advanced robotics or anything that you've spoken about, how can they get in touch?
Well, the Arm Hub has this physical facility at Northgate in Brisbane. So if there's a real interest in seeing industry and companies try and, you know, integrate new technologies, solve problems, we're here and we do that regularly. We don't do a lot of schools engagement. We do on occasions, and that we welcome that. But we are going to be working across Queensland and thinking about how we can work more with schools and bring the opportunities of doing business on the ground and making that very real and realisable for wide audiences. The other thing is we are connected to a lot of the university. So at QUT, they have a robotics research centre. They often do schools tours and activities. They're great because they have the robots, you know, from the social robots right to the, you know, big industrial ones automated cars, and they often run. COVID might have interrupted a bit, but a robotics, you know, Robotica festival. So there are always opportunities there to get involved too, and we can plug people into that.
Love it. Awesome. Corey, well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I love talking tech. And so thank you so much. This is an absolutely brilliant facility, and your creative thinking and actually changing the economy of Queensland is going a long way. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
That's it for today's episode. Now it's time to take action and build on the learnings to get inspired. First up, jump onto rashansenanayake.com/podcast and check out the show notes, links, and other relevant learning materials from this amazing episode. Next, if you learned something new today, click that subscribe button and set yourself up to receive live notifications on future episodes, as well as more opportunities to learn from our amazing guests, brands, and speakers. Last but not least, it's time to have your say. Join the conversation and share your thoughts and feedback on today's episode with a review, all while joining many others with a 5-star rating for Inspiring Design with Rashan Senanayake. Till next time.